Hello. Good afternoon. I am privileged to stand here with you to welcome our distinguished guest, Dr. Mahama. Before we begin, I would also like to thank you for coming. Despite the nature of the weather, we still expect people to be coming in, but we do have a couple of housekeeping rules. This auditorium is adjacent to other classrooms, right? So classroom is in session as His Excellency will be speaking. What we would prefer that we do, I know all of us are excited to see His Excellency, and we are going to be excited with the kind of points that he will be making. But we would like to plead that we hold our applauses, we don't clap until he completes his lecture. That would give him sufficient time to cover the vast materials that he's going to give us, right? So we would not interrupt him with clapping. We would wait till the end, and then we will clap and give him a standing ovation. Are you with me? So that is the first housekeeping rule. The second, we would probably be leaving this classroom because there is a class that is going to be in session at 4 o'clock. So we want to be able to vacate this classroom by 3:45. At any rate, His Excellency's flight is at 6 o'clock, and we want to give him enough time to get to the airport. So 4 o'clock, he would have to be at his hotel, putting his stuff together. So we don't have enough time to stay here. And what we want from all of us is for us to walk quietly as we leave the building so we don't interrupt the classes that are in session. Does that sound like a plan? Yes. Appreciate it. Well, I'm going to leave this floor, but I would like to introduce Professor Fernando Unzueta, who is going to be the moderator of this event. He will introduce His Excellency, our distinguished guest. We are all excited, aren't we? At that point, I can allow this. Fabulous. It's not loud enough. Thank you. That's what I like to see. That energizes me, and I believe it energizes His Excellency as well. Professor Fernando.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Good afternoon. My name is Fernando Unzueta, and I'm the Associate Vice Provost for Global Strategies and International Affairs. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome all of you here today. I see friends from the community, colleagues from Ohio State, from the Columbus Council on World Affairs. We do have a strong relationship, sister city relationship between Columbus and Accra, so there's a lot of good things about this visit. We couldn't be more thrilled to have His Excellency John Mahama, the former president of Ghana, with us, along with his esteemed delegation. I would like to thank Ousman Kobo, Associate Professor of History and the Director of the Center for African Studies in our office, for making this visit and the lecture possible. Ohio State has many strong connections to Ghana. We're proud to have 37 Ghanaian students at Ohio State currently, and I'm sure those numbers are going to grow in the coming years. We all see that the future of higher education is in Africa, in the international arena from our perspective. Many of our own students have studied abroad in Ghana, participated in engineering service learning projects there, internships, and studied child and family health in the country. On a personal note, I'll mention that the first chair of my home department of Spanish and Portuguese hailed from Ghana. Joe Kubayanda was a beloved scholar who specialized in Afro-Caribbean literatures and cultures. We are excited to further enhance our collaborations with Ghana, and we're honored that His Excellency has been able to spend time with us and learn more about Ohio State. John Mahama has a long history of government leadership in Ghana, serving as a member of parliament and the cabinet in many capacities. He was vice president from 2009 to 2012 and president following the death of John Mills. He was then elected to a 4-year term and served as president from 2012 to 2016. Over the years, he has received numerous honors and awards and was a visiting scholar at Johns Hopkins University. The first chapter of His Excellency's memoir, titled My First Coup d'etat, Memoirs from the Lost Decades of Africa, shares his thoughts from the day in 1966 from Ghana's first president was ousted from office. He wrote, and I quote, "When I look back on my life, it's clear to me that this moment marked the awakening of my consciousness. It's changed my life and influenced all the moments that followed." End of quote. As he begins his campaign for the presidential election in 2024, he's determined to create new opportunities and lessen the economic and financial crisis which Ghana is currently facing. I know that we're all interested in hearing his thoughts on the successes and challenges of the current state of democracy in Africa. Please join me welcoming His Excellency John Mahama.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Oh, wow. Did we buy this together? Oh. There's a traditional dress from Ghana. It's called a smock, and he's wearing a very similar one. It's like we went shopping together. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I feel very honored to have your time to come and share a moment's thought with me. I received an invitation to visit Ohio State University, which I readily accepted. Ohio State University is relaunching its Center for African Affairs, and I was invited to give the first inaugural lecture, which will kick off the relaunch of the center. It is my hope that the center will grow by leaps and bounds, and in my speech I state that I wish that in the next coming years it will be the foremost think tank on African affairs in the USA. So without much ado, and considering the constraint of time, I'd just like to thank Professor Dr. Unzueta for the gracious introduction he's giving me. And I thank you, Center for African Affairs, for inviting me to deliver this 2023 inaugural lecture. It is a tremendous privilege to be here with all of you this afternoon. I'm excited that this inaugural lecture marks the kickoff of the Center for African Studies relaunch in this august institution. I share in your big dream that soon this center will become the foremost think tank for African affairs in the United States of America. Attached to the topic for today's lecture, success and challenges of post-Cold War African democracy, is a direct question. And let me repeat the title of the lecture: Successes and Challenges of Post-Cold War African Democracy. Is democracy under threat in Africa? And so attached to the lecture topic is a direct question: is democracy under threat in Africa? And I want to begin by offering a direct answer to that question. And the answer is yes. Democracy is indeed under threat in Africa. And if you ask me the same question about America, my answer will be the same: yes, democracy is under threat in America. We could go across the globe, continent by continent, and list the number of countries that were once solid, functional democracies that are now undergoing autocratization, or in other words, a backslide out of democratic governance. Here in the United States, in the last 7 years, we've watched America go from a democracy to an anocracy, a form of government that has features of a democracy, but also has strong elements of a dictatorship. And America is hardly alone in this shift. It appears that globally, we're moving into populism and authoritarianism and an era of the strong man rule, we call it the strong man rule. A period when leaders, even if elected, teeter on the brink and push the limits of the constitutional order. I mention all of this because context is important anytime we speak about Africa. Africa is often made to seem like an outlier, forever engaged in its dysfunction and somehow removed from the larger global body of affairs. Africa is part of the global polity, and with the advent of the new media, cannot help but be influenced by its domestic circumstances and global trends. Nevertheless, what the collapse of democracy would mean to African countries in terms of development, mass migration, as well as the extraordinary challenges posed to the daily life of the average citizen, is far different from what it would mean to the rest of the world, particularly the Western world. Before we discuss the fate of our future, let's go back into the past, to a time spoken of as though it was years ago, but really it's less than a century ago. Let's go way back to our post-independence era, and that would be from like the late 50s until the middle 80s, when nearly all sub-Saharan African countries had gained their independence from colonial rule, except for Namibia, which did not achieve independence from South Africa until 1990. My country, Ghana, was the first, south of the Sahara, to gain independence from colonial rule on the 6th of March, 1957. My study of history and the narration of my father and others who were directly involved in pre- and post-independence events describe it as a time of great excitement and hope. There was high hope that the first black country south of the Sahara would blaze a trail of success and prosperity for its citizens. Unfortunately, that was not to be. Ghana's first president, a Pan-African and a socialist, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, was overthrown by the military, with the CIA as an active conspirator. Just as Ghana led the way in the decolonization process, so too did it blaze the trail into coups d'etats, as one after another, African governments were toppled and replaced by military dictatorships. Some of these coups d'etats were quite bloody, resulting in the killing of many famous liberation leaders. These were the men who had galvanized the movements which ushered us forward to freedom. Men such as Patrice Lumumba, Amilcar Cabral, Felix Moumi, Sylvanus Olympio, and Samora Machel. These coups also effectively killed the dreams of success and prosperity that attended the post-independence period. The disappointment was deep and it was palpable. All over Africa, the next 3 decades, we witnessed a descent into poverty and decay, human rights abuses, and economic crises. I was just a child then, attending boarding school in Accra, when Ghana experienced its first coup d'etat in 1966. I had no idea what a coup d'etat was, but I can still remember hearing the word repeatedly on the radio. I remember the tension that was in the air, how the teachers and administrators in the school, how even our older students were forced to smile when we younger students walked into a room while they were listening to the radio announcer dispatching the news. I remember them holding discussions in harsh tones that were quickly silenced when we, the kids, walked into the rooms. I felt as though they were trying to protect us from some tragedy. Many of us assumed that it was the death of an individual, maybe somebody we all knew. Little did we know that it was the death of our self-pride as a nation and the way of life for many of our citizens. The coup forever changed my life. I know that it is one of the reasons I stand here today as a firm believer in democracy and the rule of law. Dr. Kwame Nkrumah was Ghana's first president. My father worked in his administration as a minister of state. Arising from the coup, he was removed from office and he was thrown in jail. That Easter vacation with my father in jail and my mother living in the northern part of the country and without transportation, nobody came to collect me from boarding school. All my fellow pupils were picked up by their family members, everyone except me. The headmistress attempted to deliver me to my father. When we got to our home in the Kanda Estates part of Accra, the home I knew was my father's was occupied by military officers. The headmistress asked about my father, and the military man replied her gruffly in a hoarse voice, "Mr. Mahama does not live here anymore." That coup d'etat arrested the development not only of our country's infrastructure, but also the growth of our economy. It arrested the development of families, educations, careers, and the dreams of so many Ghanaians. It is a fact now that many of these coup d'etats were instigated by former colonial powers and their allies, whose vision of the future of these African nations differed from those of our leaders. Others, of course, were born out of the frustration of citizens triggered by the corruption and high-handedness of some early post-independence administrations, while others were driven just by the raw ambition of young military officers who wished to short-circuit their way into leadership. Either way, the people were stripped of their choice to elect their leaders and their lawmakers. A question I'm often asked is whether all dictators, by definition, are bad. It is true that throughout history, some dictators have dramatically improved the conditions of their countries. Some dictators are well educated and are not interested in enriching themselves at the expense of their nations. They genuinely love their countries and want to see their countries at their best. In Ghana, reforms carried out under the military administration of the Provisional National Defense Council, the PNDC, through what was called the Economic Recovery Program, returned Ghana's economy onto a path of positive gross domestic product growth, GDP growth, after many years of recession. Unfortunately, no one gets to choose his dictator or his autocrat in the business of unconstitutional government systems. Nobody gets the choice to root out the murderers and psychopaths or the thieves and looters amongst dictators. Except that if there was such a choice, then it will no longer be a dictatorship, but a democracy. Ultimately, that makes dictatorships unacceptable because they give the population no choice and are not accountable to anybody. And if they do not voluntarily cede power, they can only be eliminated by another coup d'etat. It is a vicious cycle that goes round and round. Thankfully for the African continent, in most countries, that cycle eventually ended. By the end of the Cold War, with the fall of the Berlin Curtain, the Berlin Wall, most African nations have started moving confidently back towards democracy. The citizens had grown tired of the revolving door of military dictators, each with their delusions of grandeur. The world was changing after the Cold War. It was becoming what we call a global village. Air travel was more accessible and more affordable. More countries across the globe were now trading with each other. Countries with dictators were generally treated as pariahs. This meant they could not be welcomed in some world capitals. But Africa needed to be a part of this, so it became trendy, almost fashionable in Africa, for African countries to be returned to constitutional democracy. With constitutional rule came elections, and it brought with it set terms of office, that is, limits on how many terms leaders could run. It brought with it free speech, accountability, and oversight and respect for human rights. African nations took quickly to democracy. On the political front, we saw extremely high turnout for elections, generally above 80%, between 80 and 90%. These were numbers Western countries that had been touting democracy for decades could only dream of. Citizens, regular people who had long been disenfranchised, were eager to have their votes counted and their voices heard. Technology enabled countries to leapfrog into the modern day. It provided access to utilities and services that for the majority had previously been beyond their reach. Cellular phones did away with waiting time for landlines to be installed. This was especially useful for citizens who lived in villages and remote areas. The new media brought the world straight to everybody's handset and transported to the world and Africa that Western televisions seldom show. Africa led with the fastest increase in broadband connectivity in the world. This was an Africa that was glorious, fascinating, and full of possibilities. The continent started to experience a renaissance in film, in arts, literature, music, and sports. There was an increase in tourism, which in turn gave rise to a growth of the hospitality services sector. With these crucial changes, several African nations found themselves on the list of the fastest growing economies in the world. Another crucial development was that citizens who had fled their countries during the difficult years and during the periods of military dictatorship effectively began to return home, creating what we call a brain gain instead of a brain drain. In many ways, it seemed like such a breathtaking comeback for Africa. But beneath the surface of that success, most African nations were still grappling with institutionalized corruption. Though the people were indeed electing leaders and lawmakers, there has often been an attempt to change the constitution in some countries to enable leaders prolong their tenure in office. There has been a constant tug of war between the elite, who want to continue to hold on to power and privilege, and the rest of the population who refuse to be neglected any longer. The citizens want a fair share in the success of their countries. They want that success reflected in affordable housing, decent jobs that pay a living wage, and lower food and petrol prices. But unfortunately, that has not been the case. The cost of living in much of Africa has gotten higher and higher. One of Africa's biggest challenges is its fast-growing youth population. It's estimated that 60% of Africa's population is under the age of 35. Many of these people have very few prospects for employment or housing. They are frustrated, disillusioned, and angry, making them ideal recruits for involvement in insurgencies or terrorism. The larger these insurgent groups become, the more difficult it is to stop them from waging violent attacks, seizing towns or regions, and becoming de facto governments in those places, often implementing their own ideological laws and dress codes. Meanwhile, Africa has also been figuring out how to deal with an expanding climate crisis, reflected in recurrent floods and droughts. Weather patterns are changing so quickly and drastically that they are virtually impossible to predict nowadays. Crops are being affected, people are being displaced, creating a new group of climate refugees. You are right if this sounds like the perfect storm or a powder keg about to explode. And that's precisely what you've been seeing happening in West Africa throughout this and the past years. There have been predictions that suggest that there will be many more coups on the continent going forward. These predictions may prove accurate. Even so, I don't believe that despots will overrun the whole continent. I'm optimistic that the citizens will fight hard to return their countries back to democratic rule sooner rather than later. And I confidently say this, but I don't say it as a politician or as a historian. I say it as a human being who has lived through periods of military dictatorships. During my late teenage years and young adulthood, the nation's finances were so tattered that government had to implement a scheme for rationing. We rationed everything from cloth to beer. We had curfews. There was a lack of respect for human rights and free speech. Food was rationed and petrol was rationed. It is an unsustainable reality, but as I mentioned earlier, for Ghana, the silver lining was in the dark cloud, which was the major reforms that were carried out by the PNDC under the Economic Recovery Program that restored Ghana's economy to a path of growth under military rule. Normally, people living in dictatorships will get tired of being bullied and having their freedom dangled in front of them like a carrot. They will either leave that country or they will revolt, but they will never submit to that treatment forever. Countries like Ghana that are committed to democracy must continue serving as examples and inspiring others to do the same. We must continue to permit free speech, even if it is critical of government. We must allow the media to operate freely and without intimidation. We must continue the peaceful transfer of power, no matter how hard fought any election was, or if one of the parties decide to challenge the results in court. We must rely on our institutions to do precisely what they were designed for. At the start of this lecture, I pointed out that context is important anytime we speak of Africa. Ghana, the first sub-Saharan country to gain independence, is just 1 year older than me. Just 1 year, that's all. We can't even let ourselves forget that we're speaking of relatively new countries, ones that were formed with arbitrary borders by our colonizers, boundaries sometimes that divide tribal groups into half. Every nation goes through growing pains, and African countries are no different. We're still figuring out how best to belong to ourselves, given how young African countries are and how well we have managed to keep stepping forward. Even when we have found ourselves on shaky ground, I'm sure we will be just fine. The path to a consolidated democratic order has been far from smooth. The recent events in Burkina Faso, Niger, Mali, Guinea, and recently Gabon serve as a stark reminder that challenges persist, threatening the very foundations of democratic progress. And I must say that in some of these countries, the insurrections or the coup d'etats that took place are the result of insecurity in the Sahelian region. as a result of the collapse of Gaddafi's government in Libya, there was an outpouring of small arms into the Saharan region, and the Sahelian region, and that is being used by insurgents to destabilize these countries. Apart from that, several of these countries are French-speaking, and some of the reasons assigned for these overthrow of governments is vestiges of their colonial heritage from their colonizers, France. Coups as seen in these countries present a significant stumbling block to the consolidation of democracy in West Africa, replacing the voice and will of the people with the barrel of a gun. To avoid such disturbances, countries must recognize and address the root causes, which can be traced back to weak democratic institutions, insufficient checks and balances, and a general lack of respect for the rule of law. We must promote inclusive governance as a fundamental pillar of democratic progress. Citizens must be able to participate in the decision-making process, regardless of their ethnicity, their gender, political affiliation, or socioeconomic background. If we embrace inclusivity, African countries can bridge societal divisions and minimize grievances. Supporting and protecting the work of civil society is crucial in safeguarding the gains made by African democracies. Independent media, trade unions, and advocacy organizations are vital in holding governments accountable and acting as guardians of democratic principles. Lastly, we must invest in the education and empowerment of our young people. They are the torchbearers of democracy, the stakeholders who will shape the future of our countries and our continent. And so let us equip them with the knowledge, skills, and confidence to engage in the democratic process. And we will, by so doing, be empowering them to become active citizens and not spectators, who would lead Africa towards a brighter, more democratic future. As I conclude, I want to encourage every one of you to join the global effort to strengthen democracy in Africa and around the world. The successes and challenges of post-Cold War African democracy depends not only on African leaders, but also on the solidarity and support that is shown to Africa by the international community. Let us fight against the forces threatening our democratic values and work tirelessly to build strong, inclusive, and accountable democracies. Only then can we ensure that the successes of African democracy will prevail over the challenges the continent faces. The only guarantee for constitutional rule is selfless and visionary leadership, the respect for rule of law, and the respect for and protection of our human rights. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish to thank you very much for your kind attention. Thank you. Dr. Kobo, thank you. Okay. All right. So what do I do? I say. Okay.
Thank you, Your Excellency. His Excellency has kindly agreed to take some questions. I have many. I also grew up in the global south among coups, large and small, in the 60s and 70s. Any questions from the audience? The gentleman here, please.
That's what I was told to do.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for your presentation, and I want to believe you touched on most of the causes for these unrest in some of these countries. My question to you is, I'm a Ghanaian as well. We're excited to have you here. Our democracy in the Fourth Republic has been just 3 decades, and you have the opportunity to have been in power, and you are seeking for power again. And these issues of the youth getting involved, all these things are made mention. What practical steps are you going to take come 2024 if you are in the seat of government to ensure that indeed the youth become part of it? And then what other things are you going to do to ensure that the institutional corruptions and all these things that you made mention as causes for insurgency because the youth are despaired would be addressed? Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to collect questions first?
3.
We'll take about 3 questions at a time.
My name is Ifa. I'm an assistant professor at the medical school. Let's just pretend it's 11 p.m. in Pingla in the Upper West region of Ghana, or the village of Hakrika in Abia State in Nigeria, or Kenyawegi in Kisumu district of Kenya, or in Kwamtethwa in South Africa. A woman goes into labor in any of these villages, and I think that this woman will be playing Russian roulette. I think there's data showing that the maternal mortality across Africa is somewhere around 330 per 100,000 live births. So I assume that it's like filling a Boeing aircraft with pregnant African women and crashing it once per year. So 54 plane crashes, 1 per each African country. My question is, why is this not a state of emergency across Africa, given that this seems like it's much worse than COVID ever was, and it's consistent year after year? And why is the government leading the charge to try and fix our problems in healthcare? That's assuming that the government is more efficient in solving healthcare problems than individuals, entities, and institutions. Why is this not a state of emergency?
Thank you. One more question here.
Sorry?
Your Excellency, good evening. My name is Albert Johnson. My mate is Stan Dugbe. Stan, hi. Yeah, I was the first police PRO for the CID headquarters in Ghana. I've also worked as the PRO for Upper East region, and I was also in charge of the task force in the Upper East before I was transferred to Northern region. In Ohio here, I'm a Buckeye. OH! I attended school here, and I've been a state investigator in Columbus here. Presently, I'm working with the Philadelphia Police Department, patrolling one of the most crime-prone areas like Allegheny and Kensington. When I heard of former President Mahama coming here, I decided to come because I like him so much. But what I have to say is this. I remember when you were making campaign, you said you were going to shake the police, Ghana police. You cannot get a very good government without a good policing. Ghana police is really shambolic. Their recruitment process is very bad. And I've challenged this a number of times. I remember when I was at the PRO of CID headquarters, Mr. David Asantia Pietu and the then IGP Ousman contacted me to come out with something. So I came out with the 10 Commandments of Anti-Corruption with my picture on it, trying to educate the Ghanaian public on the do's and don'ts of police. So I'm urging you, President, I know you are coming back to power. Say amen. You are coming back to power because all the bad things that people said about you, they now know the truth. So you are coming back. So my plea is this. When you come, try to reform the Ghana Police Service. Try to reform the police. Their recruitment process is very bad. That's not the best. And also their training is very shoddy. Very, very, very shoddy. And this is what I'm going to tell to you. Anything which happens in any district or any region, hold the regional commanders responsible. They cause it. And I've challenged so many of them. In 2008, I came out on air because when I went to the headquarters from Northern region to tell IGP Champo the causes of arms going to Boku and the rest, no one bothered. So I came out on air on Peace FM to lambast the police. I did that.
Thank you. I think we'll give His Excellency a chance to address these questions and move on to the extent we have time.
Okay, let me start with the first three questions. And I'll start with the issue of security and policing. I do think that, yes, we have challenges with our police service, and you have been part of it, and so you have hit the nail on the head in respect of what some of those challenges are. One is the quality of people that we recruit. In the past, people went to the police service because they wanted a career in the police service. Now, because of the restriction in opportunities for employment, there are people who really don't want to be police officers, but they join the police service because they want a job and be able to earn a salary. And so their heart is really not in policing. And so recruitment is one of the major problems. Aside from that, we must give opportunity for all Ghanaians to be a part of our police service. And so we had experimented with recruiting on a regional basis, and so going to every region and recruiting and bringing them together. We made the training for police officers 6 months, and so you had to go through the mandatory 6 months training. In recent times, I've heard them short-circuiting the training to a shorter period and moving the people into the service without adequate training, and that can be a part of the problem. But also, it's not just the police service, it's also us, the public. A police service is as good as the public that cooperates with it. And sometimes a crime happens, or criminals live amongst us in society. If you don't give the information to the police service, there's no way the police service can root those criminals out. And so it's a cat and horse situation. We need to cooperate with the police in order that they can adequately protect us. At the same time, we must train the police better, and we must also make sure that we recruit the appropriate quality of people to go into the service. And that's why there are qualifications for going into the service. And they include a certain number of passes at the senior secondary level, and also English and maths. Unfortunately, sometimes those things are short-circuited, and so you go and meet policemen out the counter in the police station who cannot even do inputs into the station diary. And so from time to time, we must reflect those people go in with forged certificates that don't belong to them, and so on and so forth. It's a very hydra-headed problem, but we should not give up. We must continue to struggle to get the police service that we want. Maternal deaths have been a major problem. We've made some progress, but it's not enough. Even one maternal death is not good enough if it's your mother or your wife. And so the ideal is 0. But there are various factors that are responsible. One is access to healthcare. And that's why under my government, we decided to build more CHIPS compounds. And so in the 8 years that we're in office, we built almost 2,000 or more CHIPS compounds. CHIPS compounds are these small health compounds where we send trained nurses so that when a woman is pregnant, or little illnesses like malaria and other things are treatable in these CHIPS compounds. And also train the nurses to recognize the danger signs of complication in pregnancy so that the mother can be evacuated early enough to a referral hospital. And that has saved many mothers and helped to bring maternal mortality down in Ghana. But like I said, we must continue working. Healthcare is not only about access, it's also about the training of the professionals that work in the health facility. And aside from that, it is also important that we have quality facilities for healthcare. For instance, in the CHIPS compounds, we need V-scans to be able to look at the positioning of the baby and know if the baby is presenting properly or there's going to be a complication in birth. Up to now, there are places where they put that little thing in the ear and put on the stomach to hear the heartbeat of the baby. And so it's modernization, but with a population of 29 people, a limited budget and resources that must go into education, must go into healthcare, must go into agriculture, must go into tourism, must go into, all the other sectors that we have. Sometimes there are limits to which this progress can be made. Under my presidency, we did our best to build new hospitals across the length and breadth of the country so that people could have better access to quality healthcare. We opened more nursing training colleges so that we could train many nurses to be able to man these CHIPS compounds and these hospitals. Unfortunately, the current economic crisis is leading to an exodus of these professionals that we trained. And so if you look, the recent record shows that many nurses and doctors, again, are leaving our shores and going out to look for greener pastures. And so we can't give up, because it may be your mother next who dies in childbirth, or it might be your wife next who dies in childbirth. And so as leaders, we must continue to work to make sure that no woman dies. There's one of the hospitals that I built, the Shai Osudoku Hospital, and for several years recurring, they did not get suffer one maternal or infant death. And so they were awarded a special certificate in recognition of the diligence that they were exercising in making sure that no woman died or no child died. And so I hold them up as an example that all health facilities should, attend to recognize what they've done and follow suit. The next one is about practical steps to empower young people. A lot of the challenges we're facing with our youth is a result of the tradition, the educational heritage that we took from our colonial masters. It was a grammar school education that sent you to school to learn various subjects, continue into polytechnic or into university, and then graduate, and then go and work in the public services or for some private sector organization. Now, what we realize is that not every child has the potential to continue into tertiary education. There are some children whose talent is not in sitting and learning endlessly. Their talent is in their skills, in their hands, in talents, in sports, in technical and vocational skills. And so the German system, where as the children are going through school, they are being given skills to enter the world of work, is a much preferable system. Because if the child is unable to continue into tertiary education and comes out, then he can set up a job as a plumber or as an electrician or as an auto mechanic or as a technician. There are many options that he can take to. And so that's why one of the things we did was to clear a path for students who wanted to take the technical path. And so we changed the polytechnics, because one of the major problems was that if they went to polytechnic, they came out with an HND. And there was a problem of placement between HND and degree holders. And so the HND was generally considered to be lower than a degree. So we said, okay, you can take the technical path. If you go to the technical university, you can do HND, or you can do a degree in a technical subject, auto mechanics or whatever it is. So now they have a clear path where they can leave secondary school, go to technical school, go to technical university, and come out with a degree in mechanical engineering, or come out with an HND, Higher National Diploma, in mechanical engineering. And so that makes that path easier for them to follow. The problem is how to attach that technical training to the secondary level. We don't have enough technical instructors to teach the technical subjects at the secondary level. And so that's the main problem. So they come with their drawing boards and everything, but in many of the schools, you don't have the teachers to teach the technical subjects. And so we set up, Professor Mills set up a training college for technical instructors in the new Ibrahim area. He started it, I completed that training college. Unfortunately, when we finished it, we hadn't done the first enrollment before we left office. One would have thought that this government will continue, but then they started the fight against Galamsey. And I hear that currently they have put the anti-Galamsey task force in that training college that was supposed to train technical instructors. And so when I went on campaign to New Ebrim, I served notice that the anti-galamsey people should get ready. If I do win power, the first thing I'll do is to come and kick them out of that training college. And send the technical instructors there to train so that we can send them across to the secondary technical schools to teach the children. Apart from that, we need entrepreneurship training. The government of Ghana employs less than 700,000 people. That is, if you take the public payroll, less than 700,000 people. And yet everybody who leaves university or secondary school is expecting that government should employ them. We're a population of 29 million. Government employs less than 700,000 people. So your chances of being employed by government is quite low. If you take the whole economy, the formal sector is 20%. The informal sector is 80%. So if you take the private sector, that is formal employment, the banks, the private companies and everything that are in the formal sector with governments and everything, it's 20% of the population. And so it means that if we can't grow the economy fast enough to expand that formal sector of 20%, then most people who come out are going to have to go into the informal sector. And the only way you can help them to be able to survive in that sector is to provide them with entrepreneurial training. Our children should be able to come out of school and have the training to be able to set up their businesses and become employers instead of employees. And so those are some of the innovations that we need to look at to empower our young people. But apart from that, we must grow our economies, according to the World Bank, above 8% per annum to be able to create enough opportunities for everybody to get work. Aside from that, like I said in my speech, we must promote inclusiveness. The country belongs to all of us. Opportunities must be open to everybody, not only members of a political party, not only members of one ethnic group, not only members of one religious affiliation. We must include all Ghanaians. If you are a leader and Ghanaians are working, whether it's a business that belongs to a PNC man or a CPP man or an MDC man or an MPP man, the person employs Ghanaians. And your role as government is to provide employment opportunities for Ghanaians. So if an MPP man has opened a factory and employed Ghanaians, I should be clapping for him. If an NDC man has opened a factory and is employing Ghanaians, I should be clapping for him. Not going after that person's business to destroy it because they don't support your party. That has been the bane of our country. And apart from that, sometimes our democracy is dysfunctional. One government hands over to the other, and because this government started this project, we won't put money, we won't touch it, because if we finish it, the credit will go to my predecessor. It's the most backward thinking we can have. And that's why I've said that I've made a suggestion that if we come into office, in the early years, the first 2 years, let's not start any new projects. Let's put all our resources into finishing all the abandoned projects that other governments have left. Because that will be the most useful way to spend the taxpayers' money. Because taxpayers' money has gone into those abandoned projects, and yet Ghanaians don't have any use of it. And so if you finish it, in all the secondary schools, you go there, uncompleted administration blocks, uncompleted dormitories, uncompleted dining halls, and yet you find children sleeping outside because they cannot get dormitories to sleeping. And so these are some of the things that prevent our young people from realizing their full potential. And it is something that we'll continue to work out. Rome was not built in a day. We can't turn it around immediately. But I think that we can start to do something. The free SHS has been very important in terms of allowing more young people, children eligible for secondary school, to find places. But its implementation has been very poor and very inefficient. And so I called several years ago for a review so that we can implement it better. Today, the chickens have come home to roost. The members of government themselves are calling for a review. they have agreed with the IMF now to review the free SHS program. If we started that 3 or 4 years ago, we probably would have been implementing a better program. But when I said we should review it, they said review in their understanding of the word means abolish. So President Mahama is coming to abolish the free SHS. Of course, that was political partisanship. But we love our country and we'll do our best for our country.
A couple more questions.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. We have time for 2 more questions. The gentleman in red, please.
My name is...
And Ohio State will be happy to train talented Ghanaian students.
When I'm done.
Thank you. We'll bring you more students.
My name is XW2 Nandara from Ghana Military Police, the former head of K9 Narcotic Control Board, now NACOC, and then a CI at the Office of the President. My main problem is ethnicity in our body politics in Africa. We can all recall that the Rwandan problem started through ethnicity. And then I know for a fact that in Ghana, to get a job now, it must be based on whom you know. And as you said, every nation, no country will be able to survive if its national security is at threat. This is a national security issue. And I will want to lay it before you. What will you do to be able to avert some of these whom you know, so that people who are qualified will get gainful employment to be able to survive in this world? Thank you.
Thank you. The gentleman in green, please. Or the late.
Okay.
Sorry.
First, thank you so much.
Keep the question short, please.
Okay. First, thank you so much, Your Excellency, for coming. My name is Bafwa Sophie. I'm a political science student here at The Ohio State University, and I'm originally from Ghana. I was born there. So my question to you is, what is your perspective on the international community's role in boosting democracy in Africa, especially as Africa grapples with the quest for genuine autonomy and faces growing Chinese influence and presence on the continent? How do you believe Africa can foster optimism and resilience?
Excuse me.
Sorry, I can slow down.
Just a minute. We all speak English,
Yeah.
but our tonations are different.
Okay.
I mean, the her, I didn't hear a word.
Okay, I'll slow it down.
Please come.
Okay. Oh, wow.
Come close to me, and then slow down, word by word, so that I can understand what they say.
I still need this.
Yes, go on.
So it's really a pleasure to meet you.
Let me help you.
Thank you. So what is your perspective on the international community's role in fostering democracy in Africa, especially as Africa grapples with the quest for genuine autonomy and faces growing Chinese influence and presence on the continent? How do you believe Africa can foster optimism and resilience? In your own words, you mentioned on Africa Day 2023 that hope resides in Africa. Can you elaborate on this statement, please?
Thank you.
you.
Wow.
I believe
One more.
His Excellency wants to take a question from students. Is there a student?
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm a student. Yeah,
Can you
I'm a
please
student.
give a student?
A student.
And Brown University.
Hello. From Brown.
Hello, thank you so much. I just also wanted to touch on when it comes to the African diaspora, because I see a lot of young people here as well whose parents either migrated here, and if I can speak for my own parents, I don't think they migrated here for me to just stay, but hoping to create greater pastures for me back home. Now, I have been to Ghana multiple times, and I know you did mention the case with the police. Been harassed on multiple occasions, that's fine. Also shadowed in a hospital, Ridge Hospital, saw things for myself. And then also in the area of the youth being involved in democracy, where do we draw the line between patriotism and terrorism? And also, I would love to know...
Patriotism and?
Terrorism.
Terrorism, okay.
And also, I would also love to know what you would do different this time. In essence of like, how do we also get involved? Because we also are the future. We are going to be having the torch in our hands. How do we connect those that are also in the diaspora with those that are back home? And if any, those that are also leaving home to come here with no intentions to return, how do we bring them back home?
Thank you.
Your Excellency.
I think he wants to address these 3 questions and maybe
Are they
if we
3?
have time, go one more round, please.
Thank you.
Okay, just take it.
Oh, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. The first question was about ethnicity and who you know. It is a canker that affects our country, and there are members of parliament here. Suini is here, former members of parliament. You represent a constituency, and there's something going on, a recruitment, or there's admission to schools, and somebody comes to you and says that, I want you to talk to the principal of this school to take me because it's who you know. You see, you are rather creating the who you know, because you anticipate that it is going to be based on who you know. You go and also see somebody in a position of influence to go and influence that you be taken. And that is a canker that we need to deal with. It is because of the weakness of our institutions. Obama came to Ghana and said, Africa doesn't need strong leaders. Africa needs strong institutions. The beauty of the society in which you live is that the institutions work. If you breach the law, the FBI will come after you. Doesn't matter if you are Obama's daughter or you are any ordinary person's child. They'll come after you. If you apply for a passport, they'll tell you you get it within this number of days, it will come in the mail, and it will come in the mail. If you go before the court, you expect that you'll be dealt with fairly, not because of whose child you are or whose grandfather you are. That's why institutions work. And so in the Fourth Republic, we embarked on a journey of strengthening our institutions. Unfortunately, I cannot give a good record to our institutions at present because they've been politicized. We have criticized several very partisan people who have been appointed to the Electoral Commission. People who have been in the thick of political affairs, wearing party colors. The Electoral Commission is supposed to be a neutral arbiter in the elections. How do you expect such people to be neutral arbiters when we hold elections? These are people who were patrons of one political party in higher institutions. And yet, nobody cares. It's only us who talk. Civil society was quiet for a long time. Religious leaders who were very vocal when I was president suddenly developed toothache and stopped talking. What is right is right. What is wrong is wrong. It doesn't matter who the leader is. And if we love our country, we will continue to say white is white and black is black. It doesn't matter who is in office. Unfortunately, that's not the case in Ghana. When the party we want is in power, we go quiet. When that party is not in power, then we are vocal all over the place. And so we can't build a country like that. I was criticized very aggressively, but I took it in my stride because it's an occupational hazard for a leader. I mean, if you don't want to be criticized, then don't go into leadership. Don't go into politics. You know, those I could respond to, I did. Those I couldn't. I mean, if I wanted to respond to all the things they said, guinea fowls flying to Burkina Faso, I'll go and look for the guinea fowls and come back. Ford bribe hotel in Dubai and all those things. If you want to focus on even the lies and misinformation that is told about you, you would not have 1 minute to spare solving the problems of the country. And so it's an occupational hazard for us. We need to work to build the institutions. We must appoint people who have not been openly partisan to some of these institutions so that they are able to do what we designed those institutions for. I mean, you should see what happened in the case of the diaspora person from Canada who went back to stand in his constituency. Judge Chikwesen. Recently, judges themselves are pointing out that there was a travesty of justice. He came back, he was going to run, he applied to renounce his citizenship. The Canadian government responded and acknowledged receipt of his renunciation. After that, they're supposed to issue a certificate, but the certificate is not relevant. Once you've renounced, they've acknowledged, that's it. You're no longer a citizen. He returned his passport. And he went and filed his nomination. And they petitioned and said he's not qualified because he's a dual citizen. And so the EC, as it does, put together a panel, summoned him, and said, you have been accused of being a dual citizen. And then he showed them his letter of renunciation, the acknowledgement of the letter from the High Commission, the return of his passport, and everything. And by that time, when the EC sat, his certificate, luckily, of renunciation had arrived. And EC said, you are qualified to stand. And so he went and stood. And then when the parliamentary results were announced, it was 137-137. The ruling party suddenly realized that the election of the speaker was going to be in jeopardy, so we must get one of these guys out by all means. Everything else that has happened, manipulation of the judiciary, is just to get this poor guy out of office. And the persecution he has faced is a reflection on all of you, because any of you could be in that situation as he has been. And so when we talk about the judiciary and some of the things that happened, recently, Justice Atuguba and Co have been talking. The Electoral Commissioner is a public officer, is accountable to the people of Ghana. The Electoral Commissioner cannot say, I won't go into the witness box and defend my service. It hasn't happened. Then you have no business being the Electoral Commissioner. And yet she said she won't go into the box. And you should see Supreme Court judges defending the Electoral Commissioner. You can't have accountable government like that. And so when we talk about the judiciary, it's not because we hate the judiciary, but we want what is right. And so we need to build strong institutions. Africa vis-a-vis the international community. Our first president said, we look neither east nor west, we look forward. East are our friends, west are our friends. I don't think that Africa should be made to choose between east or west. We want to develop our country. As president, if I came to the United States for bilateral cooperation, the United States would help with technical assistance. They will give you support for your health system. They'll give you support for water systems. They'll give you support for your education system, help you with books and so on and so forth. But if I want resources to put into infrastructure, to build a railway or to build a road, I won't get it from the United States. I'll get it from China. I'll get it from India. I'll get it from Brazil. And so, who says I should quarrel with China or quarrel with India when I need the resources to build a harbor or a new airport or a railway or a road? I can get that kind of money from those people. So they are all our friends, and Africa must work to its advantage. We want investors from east, from west. Let all of them come. We will not make the enemies of, we will not make somebody's enemies our enemies. We want to be friends with everybody. If you have your enemies, that's your problem. They are not our enemies. And if we have our enemies, we won't force you to be enemies with our enemies. And so we look forward, we don't look east or west. The next government's job is cut out for it. In this country, somebody said it's the economy stupid. In Ghana, is the economy stupid? That is the major issue for any president who will come into office. Stabilizing the economy, restoring it back to a path of growth so that it can create more opportunities for people. So that's the first. But the second is, after the last several years, it is obvious that we need governance reform. We need to look at our constitution again. We need to put in place things that will make it a stronger and a living document to be able to serve our nation for the next 30 years. Because there are many parts of it that we need to look at. We've set up a Constitutional Review Commission. Prof. Mills set it up. It presented its report. We wrote a white paper on it. We set up a Constitutional Review Implementation Committee. And then somebody took us to court. That's the beauty of Ghana. And put an injunction on government from continuing with the Constitutional Review. And so we had to wait. The case was adjudicated in October or November 2015, by which time we had just 1 year to go to elections. And so it was too late to pick up the pieces and push through the review. So we decided at Cabinet that we'll leave the Constitutional Review to the next president. And it's been 7.5 years now. The current president just picked the part on political participation in district assembly elections. That's all he was interested in. And he tried to put that, because he didn't get the support of the opposition, he dropped it. The other parts he took was the creation of new regions and created an additional 6 regions. That's all. But there are many other parts. There's the issue of Article 71. What do we do with Article 71? Because Article 71 has created 2 types of public officers. You have the constitutionally recognized Article 71 public officers, and then you have the others. The others have their salaries determined by the Fair Wages Commission. And then Article 71 are determined by a committee that determines their emoluments. So there's a disparity between the two. And so our party's position is that we must set up an independent emoluments commission to decide salaries for every public officer, from the president right down to the sanitation laborer, so that we all move together. If we all work in a dedicated manner and the cake is bigger, the president will get more, the sanitation laborer too will get more. Aside from that, there's the vexed issue of whether members of parliament should continue to be ministers or they should be strictly members of parliament, because it is believed that parliament is weaker because members of parliament are ministers of state, so they side with the executive. And aside from that, you elect somebody and give him a mandate and say, change the course of our lives, improve life for us in this country, but take those who will help you. Majority of them, take them from only 275 people. The rest you can take from outside. So I can't employ any of you, even though you might have the skills, because if you didn't come into parliament and are among the 275 people, where the constitution says I should take the majority of the ministers from, then I cannot bring you in as a minister to help me, because the constitution has tied my hands to take out of that pool of 275. Sometimes you might not find the skill set that you want amongst the 275, but you can't take from outside because the constitution says take the majority from there. And so what do we do with that Article 71? We need to review things like that. In the Third Republic, if you appointed a minister from parliament, you abdicated your seat and a by-election was held. But this new constitution is not like that. It's supposed to be a hybrid to allow MPs to ministers to serve in the parliament. So those are some of the issues that we need to look at: governance reform. And then also creating opportunities for everybody. If there's one thing I can say is that I'm not a person who is interested in ethnicity or extreme partisanship. Indeed, that's one of the problems I have in my own party. And so when I go to places, I'm threatened. Don't come and tell us that father for all nonsense again. We are going to make you president. You see what MPP has done? When you come, we must also do our own. And I say, look, you guys, you can't fight for political power only to come and commit the same mistakes the MPP has done. You fight for political power so that you can raise governance to a new level, and everybody will come and raise it to another level. But if you come and you get political power and you want to descend to the level for which you were elected to replace, then you really are not doing service to your country. And so it might not be palatable to listen to, but we must rise to a new standard. And I can assure you, for those of us who are NDC, Ghanaians are not going to give us that opportunity to do what MPP did. You know why Ghanaians are quiet? Because elections are next year. Ghanaians are hungry, they are angry, they are tired. But everybody is quiet because he knows that next year he'll have the opportunity to vote. And that's why they're quiet. And so if you come and some of the arrogance and the opulence and things that are displayed, you come and want to do the same, Ghanaians are not going to accept it. And so we'll do our best.
Mr. President,
Thank you so much.
That's okay.
If you could stay, we're going to have a few closing words from
Okay.
the Vice President.
Okay. That's okay.
Thank you.
last one, please. Last
I think
question.
right now,
We'll do
I
okay.
know we have to move on. That's a difficult job I have as
question.
moderator.
Oh, that's enough.
We'll have a few closing words from our Senior Vice Provost for External Engagement, Dr. Ryan Schmissing, and that will give us a chance to have informal conversation with His Excellency shortly afterwards.
Thanks, Fernando, and His Excellency, thank you so very much. This institution is extremely grateful for your presence here today and for your words, and I know that the Ohio State community, the Columbus community, our students, our faculty and staff share in that. It's clear that you resonate with them and your words were very inspiring, and we thank you. We too believe that our Center for African Studies should be the very best. We're looking forward to that growing here at Ohio State, being an important role, not only at this institution, but across the country. But again, on behalf of our institution, thank you so very much. We have a small token of our appreciation, and thank you for choosing Ohio State to come and help us relaunch the Center for African Studies. Let's share our appreciation to His Excellency.
Thank you, Ryan. And now, to close the formal part of this event, Dr. Kobo is going to address you briefly.
Your Excellency, we are excited. And I'm standing here to give a vote of thanks. For those of you who were not here when I introduced myself, I'm going to introduce myself again. I am Ousman Kobo, the current Director of Center for African Studies. On behalf of the Ohio State University and its affiliate institutions, Your Excellency, I would like to extend our immense gratitude to our distinguished guest, His Excellency, Dr. Dramani Mahama, and his delegation. Your Excellency, we do not have enough words to express our gratitude for your willingness to accept our invitation. But we are delighted that your visit has truly turned out to be a historic moment, as we had expected. You graciously accepted to usher in the revitalization of the Center for African Studies at The Ohio State University as we move forward toward rebuilding the center into one of the best institutions in the United States. Your message today has enlightened us about Africa and its effort toward sustainable political stability and economic advancement. We are extremely grateful for sharing your knowledge and vast experience with us. But His Excellency did not come alone. He came with a delegation. And I would like to recognize them and ask them to indulge me by standing when I mention their names. I want my colleagues to recognize you. Honorable Seth Tekwe, Minister of Finance, former Minister of Finance. Honorable Alex Segofio, former Minister of Health. Dr. Callistus Mahama, Honorable, former head of the local government service. Mahama, Honorable James Mahama, Honorable Madam Grace Mota Bauer, Honorable Fifi Kwate, General Secretary NDC, Stanley Dogbe, Honorable Stanley Dogbe.
An MPP joined us, Honorable Sweeney.
Honorable Sweeney, NPP. NPP Tamale North. Greatly appreciate you.
And then Peter Otokno.
Peter Otokno,
Director of Inter-Party Relations.
Director of Inter-Party Relations.
And then Vice Chairman,
And
Ousman Ayarga.
Ousman Ayarga.
A brand new lawyer.
I didn't know you were here.
You're just called to the back. He's a brand new lawyer.
Brand new lawyer, just called to the back. Congratulations. Congratulations. If I forgot to mention anyone's name, it is not out of disrespect. It's part of perhaps my negligence. Forgive me. But our gratitude also goes to others. And here I want to recognize my friend, my colleague, Dr. Alex Abaka, Professor of Finance at the Bantler University. He informed me about the opportunity to invite His Excellency, and I promised him that it will be done. And by the grace of God, it had been done. In organizing this event, we received the support of many affiliates of the Office of International Affairs, and they deserve to be acknowledged. I have in mind the entire staff of the OIA, especially my boss, Dr. Fernando Unzueta, and Dr. Gil Laz, as well as Dr. Ryan Schmitz. Our gratitude also to some of my other colleagues, Danielle White, who did most of the logistical stuff, Dr. Elizabeth Angerman, who tightened all the nooks and hooks of the nebulous protocol issues that I knew nothing about. I would also like to thank Maureen Miller and her staff, who worked so hard to put the communication together. Victor is here. Thank you, Victor. Our affiliate partners who helped in organizing this event include the Mershon Center for Security Studies. Is Ms. Noyes here? Please stand and let's recognize you for your generosity. There are other centers, other regional centers have also helped us. My own department, the Department of History, generously helped us, and so is the Department of Political Science. Many others, I cannot mention all of them. And this is particularly one of the few occasions in which an event like this brought together many institutions on the campus to help and make it happen. Let's give all of them a loud applause. This is a good time to mention my colleague, of whom I miss so much, Laura Joseph. Laura Joseph has served the Center for African Studies for more than 2 decades. She is the institutional brain, the archive of the center. She has retired, but nonetheless continued to support us. She helped in organizing this. Your Excellency, please accept our immense gratitude. You've made history for us, and we hope and pray that this would continue to sustain the relationship between the United States University. Thank you.